Alright guys, Lonksy here, and today I will be giving you some guidance, advice and tips on creating what is, in my opinion, an absolutely insane build in terms of damage output in Remnant from the Ashes. Now, as you can see from the background footage, this build crits very hard, to the point of hilarity in some instances. I critted the final boss on hard mode for 4.1 million and downed it in one damage window using this build. This stomps on all enemy types, whether it be regular, elite or bosses, and can also hold its own in all kinds of situations. It's pretty much carried me all the way to Nightmare, which I'm currently progressing through steadily. A really nice factor about this build is that it revolves around the hunting pistol and either the assault rifle or the Chicago typewriter, so it allows you to deal with single enemies or packs with ease. Before I begin going through the details of the build, it is important to point out that, as with all builds in these types of games, the desired outcome is very gear dependent. I've done 2 playthroughs on hard and been very thorough in ensuring I've covered all areas of all the maps. This has taken me around, I'd say, 30 hours or so, and has proven fruitful, and as a result it's given me the ability to explore and experiment with this playstyle. Items such as the Slayer set, Gunslingers Charm, Devouring Loop and Heartseeker play an integral role to ensuring this build hits the mark. More on that later. Now we've got the formalities out of the way, let's get into the build. Alright, so to start off, let's take a look over the items. First up, the big headliners are of course the weapons and mods. What you can see here are my go-to choices for this build. First, we have the hunting pistol. You acquire this from the quest line in the first act of the game. You'll come across a survivor at the campfire in one of the dungeons who will give you a key. At the end of said dungeon, you can use the key to open a door, which will allow you access to a room which will contain this pistol. This is a highly accurate, high-powered and effective weapon which absolutely decimates enemies from medium to long range. It causes absolute havoc on both aggroed and non-aggroed enemies. Now, why am I mentioning aggro? I'll explain why. The reason is this ring here, Heartseeker. As you can see, it provides 100% crit chance against non-aggressive enemies and increases your crit damage by 15%. So, in a nutshell, this weapon will always crit if you hit a mob who is not aware of your presence. That, along with the 15% crit damage boost, gives this a really nice edge to the build. And if that wasn't enough, this is further emphasised by the effects of the Devouring Loop. This is essentially the item in the build that will allow you to hit those silly numbers. The build's viable without, guys, but this really kicks it up a notch. As you can see, it states here that critical hits have a 25% chance to deal 300% bonus damage. That is why you are seeing in that video previously me hitting that final boss in hard mode things like 4.1 million for one shot from the pistol. It's absolutely ridiculous. Another integral part of this build is the Slayer set, which you will acquire from World 3 from the Moth Queen type thing, or whatever she is. When you acquire the Beast's Heart from killing the, again, moth-like creature that I forget the name of, be sure to give her the Beast's Heart rather than taking it back to the Undying King, and she will reward you with this set. That will then mean that you have to have a boss fight against the Undying King, but that is also quite a fun fight. As you can see, the set bonus is Assassin. Reloading increases the damage dealt on the next shot within 1 second, and if you wear all 3 pieces like I am, that's a 35% increase to damage, guys. So picture this situation: a mob, an elite sometimes in some cases, is far away from you, hasn't noticed you. All you need to do is line the crosshair up over its head. You fire a shot to the side deliberately so it misses and doesn't aggro them, of course. On the reload, you fire the shot, you hit them in a weak spot. That is 35% increased damage, along with the 100% chance to crit, which has the 15% crit damage piled onto it. And there is that chance of that 300% bonus damage. Now, as this is a single shot weapon, we are at the mercy of reload speed, so that leads me on nicely to Gunslingers Charm. This, in my opinion, is the only amulet really viable for this build if you want to try and max your DPS out, because it increases our reload speed by a massive 20%, which is delightful. The fire rate is also increased by 10%, which affects our primary weapons really nicely, and that leads me on to our choices there. Our choices here are, in my opinion, again, there's only two here. It's either the assault rifle or the Chicago typewriter, both of which are a great choice. I find that the assault rifle just slightly edges out the Chicago typewriter because I feel like it packs more of a punch and it seems to stagger enemies more often than the Chicago typewriter does. Just as a kind of bit of personal preference, if I'm trying to take things down really quickly, I'll use the assault rifle. If I'm gonna get overwhelmed by a lot of mobs, or I need to try and keep sustained DPS on something, particularly in certain boss fights like that giant moth in Act 3, I use the Chicago typewriter. It's totally subjective and entirely up to you guys. Finally, let's take a look at mods. So on my hunting pistol, I use Song of Swords, which projects a 20-meter aura that moves with the caster. All heroes standing in the aura will have their damage dealt increased by 30% for 30 seconds. In the middle of fights, guys, this is a no-brainer. It's 30% flat damage increase. You imagine how that synergizes with everything I've just explained in the middle of a massive boss fight. It's 30% flat damage increase, and it works for your allies as well. So if you're playing co-op, your buddies will thank you massively. I don't really think there's anything else that I would use in this slot, but if you want to put in the comments any suggestions, I would definitely like to hear from you. On the assault rifle, I've been having lots of fun with this. The Breath of the Desert weapon mod. Discharge 7 radiation particles with this that will seek towards the enemies within 20 meters and deal 116 radiation damage. This locks on if you hold down F, and you can spread it across different enemies. I use this in boss fights just to burn down the boss really quickly. If you land crits, it's insane. I use it in panic moments when I get overwhelmed by just lots of trash mobs, and that works as well, or a combination of both. This, again, in my opinion, is pretty much, other than maybe Hunter's Mark, the only choice of mod for this build. It maximizes the DPS. You've seen in the footage the kind of damage it puts out. That in combination with the pistol and the assault rifle's damage output, it's a no-brainer in my opinion, guys. And finally, I use Riven Scythe, simply because it has life leech. It's the only weapon I've used really so far that has some sort of effect on it, which I find quite interesting. And it does quite a nice amount of life leech. I do need to level this up because it's only level 5 and the rest of my gear is either level 20 or level 19. Okay, so there are the items. Now let's move on to the traits. Trait distribution is incredibly straightforward here. First of all, I wanted to get some sort of baseline survivability, as of course we can't do damage if we're dead. As a result, the first traits I maxed were Vigor and Endurance. This just allows us to have that bigger health pool and plenty more stamina when we are rolling and avoiding various attacks that are coming our way. The next trait is an interesting one, and perhaps some people might avoid it at the beginning. I would recommend against this. Absolutely max Elder Knowledge as soon as you can. It gives a flat 35% increased point bonus to experience. That's going to allow you to get your traits quicker, guys, so it makes perfect sense to me. The next one that is maxed is Mod Power Generation. This is a 50% increase in the speed in which your mods are going to be activated and ready. So for me, things like thinking about the 30% damage increase, having that up more often, it's a no-brainer. You can choose when to get these guys, but for me personally, these kinds of things are kind of the bread and butter of this build. Executioner is the next one that I have maxed. That is just a flat 20% critical hit chance bonus. I won't insult your intelligence and explain why I've picked this. It's pretty much your bread and butter of any RPG game. The crit chance and the crit damage are integral to how much DPS you have. Kingslayer is the next one. That was acquired, I believe, from killing the Undying King. So guys, if you take the Beast Heart to the Moth Queen and get the Slayer set, when you return to the Undying King, you will fight him. If you beat that fight, you will be awarded this trait, and this gives you a flat 50% critical hit damage increase, which is very tasty. Quick Hands is maxed due to the weapon reload speed. That's a flat 30% on top of our charm, our amulet. That means we've got a total of plus 50% increased reload speed, which means that single shot pistol action is going to be very quick. Exploiter. Now, I can't actually remember how I unlock this. I think it's just from continuously hitting weak spots. Eventually, I think the game just has a threshold of times you hit a weak spot and it will award you with this trait. That gives us a flat 25% weak spot damage increase when we get that maxed. So again, an absolute no-brainer. Another nice one is Catalyst. Now, this increases our proc chance. This works incredibly well in conjunction with the ring I showed you earlier, the Devouring Loop. When you get this, initially, when you don't have proc enabled at all, you only get 5% increased chance to deal 300% bonus damage, but once you start piling on the proc chance percentage, which is 20%, that goes up to a massive 25%. Mind's Eye is increased range damage bonus, so that's a flat increase to all your range damage of 25% when that's maxed as well. At the moment, I've just unlocked Trigger Happy, which increases weapon fire rate, which I'll certainly be getting. And I'm also just looking at kind of increasing resistances and general survivability now that I'm in Nightmare. In a nutshell, guys, the approach I've taken with this build is, will it give me more damage? If the answer is yes, use it. If the answer is no, with a few exceptions here and there, then I don't bother with it. And that's it, guys. If you have any questions or suggestions regarding this build, please be sure to sound off in the comments. I'd love to hear any of your experiences using this build, or perhaps you have some tweaks and suggestions that you'd like to make. Either way, I'd love to hear them, so please let me know. I stream most days on Mixer, so you can catch me there at www.mixer.com/Lonksy. I'll put my link in the description below and also links to my social media so you can get me on there too. This is actually my first upload to YouTube, so please do smash that like button and subscribe if you've enjoyed this video. See you on the next one, guys. 16 stacks and an elite dead, okay? Yeah, that's it. No, it's not. Oh, there we go. Oh, yes!